Thapelo Zama, and I'm a writer director. I've written a few projects. I've written some indie films, TV series. I wrote an indie TV series called The Mysterious Cube under Junkyard Content, a few other production houses. And I've written some short films, and I wrote a feature film called Friend Zoned as well. And I also currently write some literature as well on the side, as well as comic books occasionally. So I dabble in a bit of everything as far as writing is concerned. And I personally started writing at Nemisa and was mentored by Nick Mhlongo, who's a award-winning local writer who's won awards across the globe and has written several critically acclaimed books and wrote for generations as well, I think, once upon a time. So yeah, that's pretty much me in a nutshell. So the script writer's job basically is to write down the story, right, for the film or the TV series if it's a series. But they're the ones who write the dialogue and write the story and write the actions, everything that you see on the screen. It's the script writer that puts it together in a script, and that script is handed to actors who then enact the dialogue and the scenes that they've written down. So ideally, the subjects you should study if you want to be a scriptwriter at school is things like English to really brush up on your grammar, on your storytelling, at an entry level. I would say languages primarily. And then from there, once you get to tertiary, of course, if you're looking at that as well, there's certain schools that offer courses on writing. So you want to do, if you can, writing courses. If you can't, there's writing workshops and so on, or you can learn online. But just if we're talking in terms of school at a primary or high school level, then languages is probably your best foundation. Between a person who writes a book and a person who writes a script is they're different mediums, right? So they're both storytelling, but it's storytelling for different mediums, and so there's different rules. So with the book, a book is the theater of the mind. So really what you need to do there is you need to have a lot of detail, you need to use very emotive language, and you need to really go into the head of the characters. We need to know what the person is thinking, what they're feeling, what they're sensing at the time, sensory things like what are they smelling, and seeing and touching, all the physical senses that you have. You have to describe that because that information is not available visually, unlike in film, where in film you can already see what's happening, so there's less detail that's required. So basically how a script looks versus a book is scripts are more dialogue driven. It's basically most of it is character X says this, character Y says that, and a brief descriptor of what then happens after that, and then it's more dialogue. Whereas with books, you can have pages and pages of just descriptive information before you have any dialogue at all. So the difference is really that one is far more detailed because there is no visual information, so everything has to be very well detailed. It's primarily for writing, I would say, but some writers do become directors as well. Some become producers. So it's not to say that if you're a writer, that's all you'll ever do. Some do branch out into those and still write. You can still be a writer and a producer, or a writer and a director, etc. But if we're talking in terms of the field of writing as well, there's certain levels. You can start as an entry-level writer, you can end up being a head writer or a script doctor, etc., etc. So there's several things within writing itself that you can do. It's also sort of a broad field. But generally speaking, I would say it's either you advance up the chain of, the writing hierarchy, for lack of a better word, or you can branch out into directing and into producing. Top of my head, one of the biggest challenges with being a writer in the industry, the first that comes to mind is it's very competitive, and it can be very difficult to sort of get your foot in the door into the industry to actually, get a gig as a writer, especially for a major production company. So that bit is one of the more challenging aspects. The others, a lot of writers may tend to struggle with, writing for projects that aren't their own. So if, let's say, you are employed by a big production company and you're writing for a telenovela, that might not be something you're very interested in, or even if you are, you might, grow tired of writing for that particular project because it's not yours. And you might get frustrated at having to, write for something that you're not as emotionally invested in as you used to be. So that can be one of the challenges as well, is, finding employment and then being content with that kind of employment. Of course, you could go the indie route and, write your own things and then produce your own things, or have like your friends or your team sort of help you make your own films or what have you. But that requires a lot of investment, a lot of money, and is also an uphill battle in and of itself. So there are unfortunately, no easy solutions, but those are the two primary ones. And the other one I would say is that writing in and of itself is not as easy as people tend to think it is. And mastering it can be trickier than people tend to think. There's a lot of mistakes you can easily make that you might not be mindful of. So you do need to sort of try as best as you can to really polish that skill and try to absorb as much information as you can from other writers by, maybe watching very critically acclaimed films, etc., to sort of learn what you can to improve your craft as a writer, because it is an incredibly nuanced and complex field. So it helps to absorb as much information as you can so that you can be the best writer that you can be.